Okay, thank you for your patience. Ms. Leah Diggs-Natico. I am with the Division of Data Accountability and Research Technical Assistance Support and Training Education Unit. I'm here with my colleague, Mr. Ormond Frez, who is with the Educator Quality and Effectiveness Unit, and he is going to be able to provide you some answers regarding some decisions that you have to make on the highly qualified teachers and paraprofessionals. So before we get started, during the webinar, participants are encouraged to ask questions by typing in the question box. And all materials will be provided on the Division of Data Accountability and Research's Technical Assistance, Support, and Training Education website. All of the LEA school leaders and HR data point of contact should have already received the instruction guide and template that was emailed on Monday, January 11th. If you did not, please send me an email, and my contact information is provided at the end of this presentation. The data collection will run from January 11th through February 11th, 2016. The purpose of this data collection is to satisfy federal and DC reporting requirements for staff that may be counted as highly qualified. The reports prepared for this data include teacher quality in elementary and secondary, classes taught by highly qualified teachers, highly qualified teacher ratios, special education staff, teachers, paraprofessionals, and support staff, teacher and principal preparation programs, and district and school report cards. Some of these reports are displayed on LearnDC, which is DC's report card site. LearnDC currently shows the percent of courses taught by highly qualified teachers and the percent not taught by highly qualified teachers, as well as teacher educational retainment levels at the state, LEA, and school levels. So some of the changes that we have from the previous years, I'm not sure if you all are aware that we now have a DC staffing collaborative. So OSSE is offering a voluntary collaborative of LEAs and will partner with a research organization to collect and analyze information on teacher pipelines and the retention of great teachers. This means that LEAs who participate in the staffing collaborative do not need to provide respond to some of the data collections that we have. If you're interested in participating in the staffing collaborative, that information is located at the end of this presentation. So if you're interested, the individual's name, it's Itai Mizra, and again, that's provided at the end of this presentation. LEAs are also now required to make the initial HQ determination. In previous data collections, OSSE would make the HQ determination, but we found as though LEAs are in the best position to make the initial HQ determination, and based off of the information that's provided in the template, we will then reach back out to LEAs whose HQ determination we might have an issue with. So formatting and mapping. So we've also now changed some of the restrictions on we've put in place some restrictions on the template that limit some of the data that can be entered, formatting, so removing of columns, adding workbooks, things of that nature. We've now also provided some drop-down menus to assist in inputting of the data, and we also now have fields that will automatically highlight based off of some HQ determinations. So I'm sure you are all aware of the Every Student Succeeds Act. So please be aware that while this specific collection is still a requirement for the 15-16 school year, it will not be required for the next school year and beyond because of changes in connection with the recently enacted Every Student Succeeds Act. We will share information about any future reporting requirements on teacher qualifications as soon as it becomes available. So here's the current workflow for this data collection. So LEAs who collect the data from the class scheduling and HR systems. LEAs are to upload and provide their HQ determinations into the QuickBase application using the template provided. OSSE will review LEA's HQ determination and reach back out for any clarification. OSSE will return the data set to LEAs via QuickBase, and LEAs are to review and, if need be, appeal. And then OSSE will perform local and federal reporting. So which staff are to be included in this data collection? So you're to include teachers, paraprofessionals, special education support staff. And you can include long-term substitutes, and those are teachers who are in the classroom for 4 or more weeks. Which staff are excluded? General education support staff, administrative roles, volunteers, short-term substitute teachers, and vacancies. These staff that are included are actually captured in other data collections that we have. If a contracting firm is hired to perform certain duties and the LEA does not pay the contractor directly, you also would exclude those staff members. So now we're going to talk about the data collection template. So the first part of the template has school and LEA information. So you're going to put in the LEA code, the LEA name, school code, and school name. And this information can be found in the template under the LEA and school codes list. One thing I'd like to note is that once the LEA puts in the school name, this will then highlight other cells in the template that will help you make your HQ determination. So please make sure that you fill in those highlighted columns. So next we go to the staff member information, in which the LEAs will put in the last name, first name, middle name, suffix, alias or maiden name, local staff ID, social security number, and this is optional, the date of birth, ethnicity, race, and gender. In the past, we've had some LEAs in which did not put in any of the teacher information other than the local staff ID. We would advise that you at least provide us with the last name and first name and date of birth if you are going to provide, if you were only thinking about providing the local staff ID. However, if you do only provide the local staff ID, please keep the local staff ID consistent. Sometimes this data is merged with the faculty and staff roster, and we have found that some of the local staff ID numbers can be duplicated throughout, and so we just want to make sure that we have the most reliable and consistent data possible. So when you're reporting staff, the list below is the staff members that you only need to include once. Inclusion teachers, elementary classroom teachers, paraprofessionals, and special education service providers. Please note that elementary classroom teachers are only listed once unless they teach a single subject such as music, art, science to various classrooms. Paraprofessionals are listed only once unless an LEA splits the employee's FTE between general education and special education. Secondary teachers and teachers of elementary single subject classes shall be listed as many times as they have classrooms that consist of different groups of students. So for example, if teacher X has 3 art classes, one for 9th, one for 10th, and one for 11th, these classes can be listed separately. Students of different grade levels may be combined into one classroom. So if a teacher teaches Algebra 101 and has 10th and 11th grade students, the LEA can list that class only once. So in the highly qualified section, we have federal role, teacher of record, class section ID, class name, class subject taught, grades taught in this section, curriculum, core class indicator, HQ rules used, proof of knowledge of subject matter. I want to also note that in the instruction guide, it goes into a lot more detail. So if you have any questions, please also look in the instruction guide. So the columns in Peak have drop-down menus, and the yellow column for core class indicator auto-populates based off of what you put in for curriculum. If you have a teacher who teaches languages other than English, please report according to the subject that they teach. For example, if you have bilingual math, you can just put it as a math class. Sped and ESL resource teacher should be listed as Sped or ESL when they're operating as teachers in pull-out or in inclusion capacity. A resource math taught to special education students would just be listed as a math class. Course content, not method of delivery for students served, determines the appropriate match. So self-contained special education, grades 1 through 3, is an elementary education class. So now we have the experience in education section. Please be mindful when you're using house to put in the appropriate years to be able to qualify for house. And Armand will talk about more in detail about house requirements. So the last section of the template has LEA's HQ determination. This is new to the template, in which LEAs are to make the HQ determination and update the column. For guidance on making HQ determinations, I've provided a link to the Highly Qualified Resource Guidebook, and also listen very closely to Armand, who will be speaking in a moment. So once the LEA has completed the spreadsheets are to be uploaded into the QuickBase application. So you're going to log in. I've provided the link with your username and password. Once logged in, you're going to go to the faculty and staff data application. You're going to click on the edit icon represented by a pencil icon to the left of the record. Click Choose File next to HQ Claims Upload. Browse through your system to identify the file to upload and then click on that file. Click Open or double-click on the file name. Click Save for the record, and the record should now show for you to be able to review. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Armand Frez.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Leah indicated, my name is Armand Frez. I'm the Manager of Educator Quality and Effectiveness here at OSSE. One of the things that we do is to provide guidance and technical assistance related to highly qualified teacher determinations and other questions that arise about that. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just doing a very, very brief and high-level overview of highly qualified teacher criteria and who you will need to be able to report as highly qualified or not. And then I'll open it up if there's any questions towards the end. Okay. So who must be highly qualified under ESEA? Okay. Under ESEA, elementary and secondary teachers of core subject areas need to be highly qualified, and by core subject areas we mean subjects like math, English, science, some of the social studies subjects like geography, economics, civics, etc., reading, English language arts, foreign language, the arts, so art classes, music classes, etc. We have a full list of core subject areas in the guidance document that Leah just referenced. In addition, Sped teachers, those that are self-contained, and also Sped resource teachers have to be highly qualified as well. Teachers of English learners, self-contained, and also EL resource teachers, instructional paraprofessionals, and also long-term substitutes that are serving, that have been serving in core content classes for 4 weeks or more. As far as teacher highly qualified criteria, they're actually pretty straightforward, but there's a little bit of nuance when we start looking at subject proficiency. Essentially, in order for a teacher of a core subject area to be highly qualified, they need to have a baccalaureate degree, one. They need to be to possess a state license if that's applicable. As I'm sure all of you know, in DC, there's a rule that says that public charter school teachers are not required to have a license, so that's why I say if applicable. DCPS teachers absolutely are required to have a license if they teach a core subject area for highly qualified purposes. Subject proficiency is the third element, and under subject proficiency, I won't go through all of them, but there's a list, obviously, of things that one can do in order to demonstrate subject proficiency, and they range from things like Praxis 2 content exams to undergraduate majors, things like advanced degree majors or equivalent. There's a range of different things that they can do there. Self-contained SPED teachers, Leah alluded to this, and it's really important to recognize that at the state level, we don't consider a teacher to be a SPED teacher because they teach students with special needs. We consider a SPED resource teacher to be a SPED teacher, but if a person is self-contained in a self-contained classroom and teaches special needs students, but they're teaching academic subjects such as math, science, reading, English language arts, social studies, etc., that teacher really is a teacher of those subjects. And so that individual needs to be able to demonstrate subject matter. So for a self-contained SPED teacher, they have to be able to demonstrate that they meet subject proficiency requirements in the content area. And if it's a new SPED teacher, they can also use the house to meet HQT requirements in a core subject area if they already are highly qualified in one subject area, and if they're the sole deliverer of instruction in a core content area. Okay. For an inclusion SPED teacher or a SPED resource teacher, and that would be somebody who's pulling in or pushing out, for DCPS only, they would have to hold a valid teaching license in special education. Okay. But for a public charter school SPED inclusion teacher, the requirement is that they would have a baccalaureate degree. And the rules for EL teachers are pretty similar. A self-contained EL teacher, again, if they're teaching core subject classes, they really are a teacher of that class. We don't necessarily consider them to be an EL teacher per se. They would have to be able to demonstrate subject proficiency. So for DCPS, they need to have a valid teaching license in English as a second language, and they have to be able to demonstrate content knowledge in one of the ways that I described earlier. If the teacher is a self-contained EL teacher at a public charter school, then they would have to possess a baccalaureate degree. And for inclusion EL teachers, at DCPS, the requirement is that they hold a valid ESL language teaching license. And for public charter school EL inclusion teachers, they would have to demonstrate expertise through one of the following. And the way they would do that is either by having a DC license in ESL or by passing the ESL Praxis specialty test, or by completing coursework required for ESL licensure in DC. So let's move on and talk a little bit about paraprofessionals. And so one of the questions that we get a lot in my office is, what's the difference between an instructional and a non-instructional paraprofessionals? And so what I did is just to provide sort of a comparison, so you could see some of the different duties and functions that an instructional paraprofessional would have versus a non-instructional paraprofessional. And so there's a big yes and no at the top of that slide. Yes, you will report on instructional paraprofessionals, and no, you will not report on non-instructional paraprofessionals. But just to give you a couple examples, an instructional paraprofessional is somebody who might be providing one-on-one tutoring, someone who is assisting with classroom management or providing instructional assistance, someone who is providing instructional support in a library or media center. They may be acting as a translator, or they may be providing instructional support services that are under the direct supervision of a teacher of record, someone who's highly qualified. A person is not an instructional paraprofessional if they're simply serving only as a translator, or if they only conduct parental involvement in activities such as chaperoning and things like that. Someone who is working in food service or someone who's a volunteer would not be considered an instructional paraprofessional also. Okay, just to talk a little bit about the requirements for paraprofessionals. A highly qualified paraprofessional must have at minimum a high school diploma or GED. Okay, in addition to a high school diploma or GED, a highly qualified paraprofessional also, they have a couple of options. They can either possess an associate's degree from an accredited college or university, or they can have completed 2 years of full-time study, and that would be a minimum of 48 credit hours at an accredited college or university. Or they can also have successfully completed the ETS Parapro assessment with a passing score of 461. Okay, and so Leah mentioned before that I'd talk a little bit about House, and so House is an option for teachers who want to demonstrate subject proficiency. It's specifically, or I'd say not specifically, but it's most commonly used by veteran teachers. And so House is available for teachers who are not new to the profession, and the Department of Education defines teachers who are not new to the profession as teachers who were hired prior to the first day of the 2002-2003 school year. So that's somebody who's been teaching for quite a number of years. Every year, it becomes increasingly unlikely that you will have teachers who are eligible for the House, but it is an option in the event that you do have people who are eligible. And really, it's designed to evaluate content area expertise by awarding points for teacher experience and professional practices. There are about 5 different criteria that are included within the House. I'm going to talk a little bit about those on the next slide. And so when you look at the House rubric, you'll see that one of the pieces that that usually gives the teacher about half of their points is if the individual has lots of years of experience. About half of the total points for the House rubric can be allocated based on years of experience. There's a maximum of 50 points there, and you can give someone 5 points per year. So if you've got a teacher who's been teaching since before the 2002-2003 school year, chances are that individual is going to max out that 50-point requirement there. College level coursework, you can give 3 points per credit hour of coursework. Okay. For activities related to the content, these would be different types of professional activities, things like serving on a panel, participating in national board certification assessments, perhaps being on a review committee for program approval or university accreditation. All those different types of things count towards activities for column 3. Column 4 really relates to service related to the content area, so things like participating in conferences as a presenter, serving on panels and boards related to teacher work or content specific areas. Those are different types of things that a person could do also to demonstrate service related to the content. And then, of course, any types of awards, presentations, publications, any kinds of accolades that an individual has received that are any kind of recognition. Those are things also where they would be able to earn points towards the House rubric. But to be perfectly honest, most people earn the majority of their points through their years of experience and their college level coursework related to the subject area, columns 1 and 2. And then I just wanted to talk to you really briefly about the proper documentation of subject proficiency. And this is one of the areas where we get lots of questions also. And people often call my office and they ask, when we come to visit for Title I or Title II to do a monitoring visit, what should your documentation look like? And so really, your documentation should look as official as possible. So when I won't read through all the options, but things like official transcripts, make sure that if you're holding up a license or a teaching credential, it's a valid teaching credential. It's not something that's expired, because if it's expired, it's not something that you can use for demonstration of meeting highly qualified requirements. Transcripts should be official. You shouldn't be maintaining photocopies of transcripts and presenting that for evidence of an individual demonstrating subject proficiency. If you have a teacher who completed a degree in a foreign country, there should be an official foreign credential evaluation report. I can remember a time when I was on a visit and reviewed a transcript from a diploma from Thailand, and that's great. I don't read Thai, and also we don't. My team doesn't make determinations about the equivalency of credentials from one country to the United States. So we have a list of agencies that perform foreign credential evaluations, and so we can make sure that you have access to that if you ever need it. And then finally, if you're presenting score reports from the praxis tests, just make sure that you have all the pages of the examinee's score report. It's really important for us because there's important information that we need to see in order to verify legitimacy of those documents. And then finally, parental notification requirements. There's some requirements on the part of the LEA with respect to reporting for whether you have a core of teachers that are fully highly qualified. Every year you're required to notify parents regarding their right to request information, and so there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. There really is no right or wrong answer for how you're going to report. It can be a letter that you mail to parents. You can send, you can actually post information on your LEA's website. It can be part of your parent handbook, or if you've got parental involvement information that you provide around the start of school, you can do that as well. Where it gets a little bit trickier, though, is the notification to parents of students that are being taught by a non-highly qualified teacher for 4 weeks or more. And so you have to make sure that you are notifying parents directly if their child is taught by a teacher who has been taught by a teacher who's not highly qualified for 4 weeks or more. And that part is non-negotiable. And then also you have to make sure that you maintain copies of those letters, because when OSSE teams do monitor, whether it's desktop monitoring or whether it's in-person monitoring, that's information that we're going to want to see. Okay. And so I will be around for questions at the end if anyone has any questions about any specific HQT determination issues. And for now, I'll just turn it back over to Leah.
So the last part of the template has to do with special education service providers. So LEAs are required to report the HQ status of special education support staff based on education level and or licensure, regardless of the class content. For further guidance on which support staff are required to have a license, please see the instruction guide, and also on the template there is a matrix, HQ matrix that will have that information as well. So I would just like to say thank you for everyone attending this webinar. If you need assistance with QuickBase and or with the data elements and processes for this data collection, my information is provided along with the director of the Training and Technical Assistance with DAR. If you need assistance with the highly qualified determinations, Orman has provided his email address. And if you are interested in participating in the staffing collaborative, that information is provided as well. Again, I'd like to say thank you and have a great rest of your day.